In Australia, there are nearly twice as many kangaroos as people. True or false?
True.
Australians celebrate Christmas with a barbecue on the beach instead of traditional winter festivities. True or false?
True.
In Australian business setting, people value direct communication and prioritize honesty over formality during discussion. True or false?
True.
Hi and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. My name is Tjasa Strle and I'm a cross-cultural leadership coach and the creator of ASHA Global Voice. Together with my guests, we are sharing stories from around the world about different cultures, leadership, and human experiences that connect us. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to me. And now, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the ASHA Global Voices Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Beck Davis, all the way from Australia. Beck is a seasoned strategist and creative leader with over 20 years of experience in public relations, marketing communications, and senior leadership. As the founder of Revolution Creative and Zephyr PR, she's collaborated with global brands and startups, blending innovation with strategy to deliver outstanding results. Welcome back. It's so great to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
So if we start with true or false statement, I would love to know, you said that it's true that in Australia there are nearly twice as many kangaroos as people. Can you say a bit more about it?
That might not be true. I might have made that up. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I can say that as an Australian, we do see a lot of kangaroos. And where I live on the Gold Coast in Australia, we do have kangaroos, that you do see out in the more rainforesty and regional areas. So there's a lot of kangaroos, but maybe I might have exaggerated. It might be false.
I think it's true because when I was, kind of preparing the statement, I also checked it and Google says that you have nearly twice as many kangaroos as people.
Well, maybe we do, but I do know there's a lot.
Yeah, really a lot of them. Great. And I was also thinking about, one time I found this cute animal named Quokka. I think is this the correct pronunciation?
A quokka.
Quokka, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever see it?
So most quokkas are in Western Australia, which is on the other side of where I am on the East Coast, but my family is from over there, so I have been lucky enough to see a quokka, and they are very cute. You're right.
They're
probably
cute.
One of the cutest. Yeah, so cute.
Yeah.
But we don't have any here where I live.
Okay. Okay, let's move to the other statement. Australians celebrate Christmas with a barbecue on the beach instead of traditional winter festivities. You said that this is true. And you also live at the Gold Coast, which is, on the beach.
The beach.
So yeah, do tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Christmas Day in Australia, it's always really hot. So the prediction for next week is that it's going to be around 30 degrees and really heavy humidity. And there's no way you can eat hot food when you're doing that. So we have a barbecue, which is obviously like meat and different. So sometimes we do still cook a roast beef or something like that, but a lot of salads as opposed to lots of hot vegetables and things like that. But I live just near the beach, so my family are coming to my house for Christmas, and we will be going down to play some beach cricket after we've eaten on the beach and hang out. And hopefully the weather's good. It does traditionally in summer here rain a lot, and it can be a bit stormy in the afternoons, but we'll definitely be going down to the beach. And honestly, that's how I've always been able to celebrate Christmas in Australia with my family. We're always near the beach somewhere.
That sounds amazing. I've only been one time, I think, on the beach for Christmas, and I loved it.
Yeah, and it's definitely an experience.
You mentioned also cricket. So cricket is a sport that is common in Australia.
Well, it is, but I said beach cricket. So beach cricket is really, I guess it's an an Aussie form of cricket. The rules are probably slightly lax compared to professional cricket, but it's just all about having fun. And everyone will always have a beer in their hand or some sort of cold drink in their hand and playing. And every family usually has different rules around like how you play, but it's always really good fun. So we do it on Christmas Day and then on Boxing Day as well, usually.
On Boxing Day?
Yeah, on
I
the
don't know about it.
26th. Yeah, so on the 26th, which is obviously the day after Christmas, we have Boxing Day, and that's usually the day where you eat all the leftover food and you still keep hanging out with your family. And yeah, but Boxing Day cricket is also, we have the Boxing Day match in Australia, which is like the professional cricket. So there's the real game happening on the TV, and then usually you're out in the yard or at the beach or, having a fun game of family cricket as well. It's a bit of a tradition in my family, and I know in lots of other my friends' families as well.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. So you really kind of spend 2 days for Christmas together,
Yeah,
enjoying by the beach, barbecue,
yeah,
cricket.
yeah.
Great. Okay. And the last one, it was that in Australian business settings, people value direct communication and prioritize honesty over formality during discussions. And you said that this one is true.
Yeah, look, I find this one, and I'm, speaking broadly, but this is, I guess, more significant to myself. But in my experience, obviously there's professionalism and then there's formality. But I think, having and this is how I've always worked within my different roles in external companies, in my companies, is having that, a chat, if that makes sense. So having a back and forth with someone, a one-to-one, and having a chat and working through things and figuring out, rather than um, there has to be some formality, I guess, if depending on the circumstance. But in general, I think it's a highly valued part of our work culture in Australia, is having that approachability and being able to have a direct discussion about something rather than letting it kind of get tied up in formality.
Okay, great to hear that. So you would say, if I understood correctly, that also leaders are creating the environment where others, well, team members feel kind of empowered and encouraged to express themselves honestly and just share their opinions together with you so that you can discuss it and find good
Yeah,
solution.
yeah, and look, and I guess I'm talking from my personal experience, not for every single workplace in Australia, but in my experience, absolutely, and in all of the roles that I've been in as an employee, that's definitely been something that I've taken away from that experience, and then been able to bring into my own businesses in a leadership role.
Okay.
I think there's a
Um,
there's a saying, and I don't know if it's totally applicable, but I always think of it in my head, and it's um, you catch more flies with honey. So I guess it's like, if you can be in that situation and be amicable and nice, even if it's a tough discussion, you're going to get more out of it.
for sure, I agree with you. Um, and tell me, if we stay with the Australian culture a little bit more, is there any specific way that Australians greet each other?
Uh, well, we probably don't say good day like everyone thinks we do. But I think just, hi, morning, just, um, you know, yeah, I think just hi is probably how you going is another thing that, hi, how you going? I think in my experience, like always, it's like an open ended, like it's a caring thing. Like, hi, how are you going? It's, how are you doing? Are you okay? Kind of thing.
Okay. And then when you meet friends, do you kiss each other or not? Or
Um, Look, my close friends, if I haven't seen them for a while, we'll hug. Maybe not so much kiss. Um, Hugging is definitely a thing, I think, with my friendship group, of both males and females. I think that's kind of, a welcome, like, hey, quick squeeze.
yeah, I do the same.
Mm.
Um, and tell me from your perspective, what defines the essence of Australia and makes it unique? What would you say?
I think that in Australia, one of the great things about us and how we are is that we're majority approachable, and there's kind of like an underlying warmth within that, which I think is it's a welcoming trait. It's a like, hey, we're here, we're all here together kind of way to communicate and welcome people, and I think that's and that in the words, but I think that's how our like the personality that embodies what people think Australians are like. Like, we're friendly, we're happy, and I know that again is a broad statement, but in general, I think that that's our culture. We're here. Come on, we've got a big country. Like, yeah, and I think it's that kind of everyone has a spot, if that makes sense. So, and I don't mean that just in like a multicultural sense. I mean, Australians, like, some of us are convicts, some of us are migrants, that kind of thing. But in general, it's just like everyone has a spot there's, and again, a general statement, but in my experience, that's how I feel.
So lovely to hear that. So would you say then that based on that, that also for foreigners, it's easy to meet Australians and form connections or not?
Yeah, I think so. And on the Gold Coast, we have quite, even it's building up now in, like, I guess the post-pandemic times, but we have a lot of multicultural visitors and backpackers and people moving to Australia. And I do think in general that's, even when you go out where I live, there's people from all over the world, and a lot of them are just here for a holiday, or they're here for a working visa, or they've moved here, and they can be from all corners of the planet, and we're all hanging out together.
No, wow, that's amazing to hear. And yeah, you mentioned that you live on the Gold Coast, which is a coastal city and a region in the state of Queensland. And can you tell us even a bit more about the lifestyle there, and as well tell us if it's any different from the rest of Australia?
I think the Gold Coast does have a very unique lifestyle. And, for a long time, I'm from here, like I'm born and bred from here. But it's kind of rare to find people that are actually from here, because everyone moves here because of our lifestyle. And it's something that for a lot of years, if you move to the Gold Coast, there's a lot of sacrifices you make because you choose the lifestyle. And I say sacrifices in, like, for many, many years in a work environment, our salaries have always been lower on the Gold Coast because they're like, well, that's what you get because you choose to live, in this coastal kind of vibe. It's only probably now in the past 5 years that we're, I guess, becoming more of a cosmopolitan city, and bigger businesses are starting to move here as well. So there's probably that's lessening, but our lifestyle is number one over our work a lot of the time. And that doesn't mean that we don't work hard. It just means that the way we work is different. So, in terms of corporate roles and things like that, you still might be working long hours, but maybe you're working different hours. Maybe you're starting a bit later because you want to go for a surf in the morning, or maybe you're finishing earlier because you want to do something else in the afternoon. So I feel like we've carved out this quite unique lifestyle here on the Gold Coast, and a lot of people move here because of that, because it's in the foundation of a lot of the businesses that we have here, and just the way that we choose to live. It's really ingrained in the culture that I guess everything almost rather than working to live, you live. No, I mean, what far out. Just whatever the opposite is, but we like our lifestyle is really highly valued. And we like to make the most of where we do live. We do live in one of the most beautiful places in Australia, and there's many of them, but I do think we're unique in Queensland. I haven't lived long term anywhere else in Australia. I did a short stint in Perth in Western Australia when I was in my 20s, but I only lasted a few months because I missed our lifestyle and I came home. But and I have lived, I lived in the UK for a few years and New Zealand for a few years as well. But there's just nowhere like here in terms of, how we rotate around work and our lifestyle so that we can have the best of both worlds.
Mm, sounds amazing, Beck.
But we still work very hard. Don't get me wrong. Like we still work hard, but we work hard to be able to have the benefits to be able to make the most of where we live.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that these two things should be excluded. I also believe that if you feel, great within your personal life, enjoying life as well, the
Yeah.
beach, surfing, then you have even more energy to bring into work and just
Yeah.
work smart hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, what I've heard is that work-life balance is valued in on the Gold Coast. But would you say that it's also valued throughout Australia?
Yeah.
Is it something that is
Yeah.
important to Australians?
I definitely think it is, but I think that in, I guess, like post pandemic, there's been more of a focus on it because obviously, globally, everyone had a shift in how they did work and working remotely. It wasn't really a thing prior to COVID. I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but in Australia, it really wasn't. It was, you were in an office or at a workplace during those, your set work hours. And if you wanted to work from home, it was like a really weird thing to ask. So I think, I think nationally, definitely across Australia, there has been a huge shift in that work-life balance. And also, I think almost like a wake-up call in terms of, all of the things that we've taken for granted, like people working 70. And look, I used to work 17-hour days back in my corporate role before I left that. Like I used to work, it was my life. It was what I did. I threw everything into it. But then you realize when everything stops, you actually realize that you're taking everything outside of that for granted, and there's a real need to have that work-life balance because, like you said before, if you're not happy in your personal life, how can you be happy in your professional life? Because there's no alignment there. So I definitely think everywhere across Australia is embracing that work-life balance, and particularly the younger generations coming in to the full-time workforce out of university. They have, I guess, in the last 5 years, they've really they don't know any different. So now when they come into the workforce, their expectations is that they can do a half day or they can work remotely if they need to. There's just more flexibility, which creates a better work-life balance, which I think is a really great thing for us to be embracing.
Yeah, for sure. I think really with COVID, it was a revolution and it brought something positive to us so that we finally started to realize that it's possible to work remotely as well. As long as you do the work and, goals are accomplished, why would it matter from where do you work?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And tell me, I'm also curious because you have such beautiful nature, such, diverse also animals. What would you say? How is the kind of the connection between Australians and nature?
Look, I think every individual is different. But I do think, in my part of the world here, we're very outdoorsy and, we like to be out in nature, whether it's at the beach or out in the beautiful hinterlands, camping or hiking and doing things like that. I think majority, I think most of the people that I know love being out in nature. So funny story and a slight segue, but my husband and I, we actually It sounds really silly, but we love bird watching, and I know that sounds like such a weird thing, but we only really discovered it this kind of year, but we love like trying to find cool birds, and we post them on this Facebook group that we're in, and but it's really cool. Like there's so many cool birds in Australia that you can just see, and it does sound like it's, you know, maybe I'm ready to retire and go bird watching, but it's really interesting and we love it.
It sounds interesting, and I want to be a part of this Facebook group to discover
Yeah,
more birds.
yeah, it's
No, really,
fun.
I agree. I agree with you, and you know they're fascinating. No,
Yeah, and there's so many different types of birds that you think are all this. Like you think like there's like lorikeets and parrots, or you know different, but there's so many different varieties of them, and it's really cool.
yay. And tell me, what would be your advice to someone starting to work with Australians? Would you say are there any specific communication styles or cultural nuances that they should be aware of?
Look, I think being, you know, being direct is very important and valued, but I also think you know, everything is in the delivery, and I do know that, you know, the way that we, you know, that we communicate can be quite different to other cultures in terms of maybe we are a bit casual and a bit more relaxed. We can also be very professional as well, but I just think, you know, being direct and open and honest is something that, you know, is highly valued.
Hmm. And I'm also curious what communication tools and platforms are primarily used in Australian workplace. So just do you prefer in-person meetings, email, messaging apps like WhatsApp or anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, so look, we like my teams and clients, like we use Slack as our main kind of
Mhm.
chatter box back and forth, in terms of a platform for comms, and it's good because it can work in both like a connection way, like a chat way, and then also in a more in professional circumstances, like, you know, updating things. We also the core platform we use for project management is Monday, which is where we do all of our work and where everything lives, across all of our different client bases. When we're meeting with clients, I think, you know, in person is always great, because I like to say when you're meeting someone in person, you know, it's a 4D experience, and you can pick up someone's, you know, vibe and their emotions, and I guess their different mannerisms, different than how you can pick them up on a screen. But on the flip side of that, since COVID and, you know, Zoom and these kind of video meetings and things like that have become such a part of the norm, now it's very, you know, we also spend a lot of time on Zoom meetings, and we have national clients and international clients as well. So obviously we're not meeting face to face all the time. From a productivity perspective, I think we've kind of gotten over a few of the speed bumps that maybe we had in the beginning when we were still grappling with this whole video call piece. But so, yeah, so now I think, look, we mix them up and we do a bit of both. I always prefer to meet people in person initially if we're going to be doing like a lot of work with them. So I'll fly to wherever I need to be within Australia to, you know, meet them and have that initial meeting. But I would say that probably, look, 70% of our meetings are on a Zoom. Whereas, you know, rewinding back a few years ago, they would all, like our boardroom was booked out all the time. So there's
Mm.
definitely been a shift, but I don't think um, it's affected anything. I think it's something that has just now become more ingrained in what we do.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say? What role do innovation and entrepreneurship play in shaping Australia's economy and culture?
Oh, well, so as an example, so the Gold Coast, and I probably need to fact check this stat for right now, but we have always had the highest number of entrepreneurs per capita of anywhere in Australia. And I say entrepreneurs in that number is calculated by people with registered businesses. So a lot of people working for themselves rather than for bigger companies. And I think that culturally what that has created amongst innovation is a drive to be able to give it a go. And in Australia, there's so many amazing tech startups coming out of Australia, and also even in the AI space. So I think that it's something that is really in the business community in Australia, like it's something that we really value. And even from, product development perspective, different, ideas and different ways of doing things, or like processes and platforms. I think that we play a big part in, developing that here globally in terms of innovation, even though we're such a big country, but a small country in terms of that community and that number of people that are really, heavily involved in innovation, startup, entrepreneurship. And it's something that I think we all value. And I think it's based on that great old, give it a crack saying. So people are, willing to give it a go and see what happens.
Okay, interesting. And tell me, if we move now into the field that you are at for more than 20 years now. So tell me, is there a particular story that drew you into marketing and PR industry?
So when I was young, I always wanted to be a broadcast journalist. So we had a very, prolific TV journalist called Yana Vet, and she was on TV, reading the news, and I wanted to be her when I was growing up. So that's where I started my journey. I always wanted to be a broadcast journalist, and I went to university and I did that, and I did PR and communications as well. I also did a degree in Japanese as part of that, but I have Japanese language, but I haven't really used that yet. So, so I guess that's where it started. I knew that I wanted to communicate. So that's where it all started. And then it's evolved over the past few decades in terms of what I do. So my roles have varied. I started as a journalist, and then I went into PR, and then I moved into marketing. And in terms of the story, like really, I think that, I wanted to be that lady on the news is kind of what I wanted to do. And I wasn't, but then I found another way to be able to communicate and I guess have the ability to share ideas with a broader audience and via, communication basically. And in terms of marketing, I think I just segued into that, over the years, I guess, and it's really about being able to communicate, and whether you're communicating in a media sense and storytelling sense that way. It also really applies to brands and business as well, because you've got to have that ability to tell the story to engage the consumers, and then that obviously has a commercially viable outcome. And I think that's kind of where my skill set rolled around and kind of popped out where I am now. So yeah, it's been quite a diverse journey, and there's no part that I guess I feel, like I'm better at one than the other, because it's all meshed together within my experience, and I wouldn't be able to do one thing without the experience of doing the other. So yeah, so here I am.
Interesting. And I cannot go past the fact that you also studied Japanese. So you actually speak Japanese. It's a challenging one, no?
Yeah, very challenging. And to be honest, so when I started my university degree in the year 2000 was my first undergrad degree. When I started it, the economies were quite different, and the international economies and Australia's alliances were very different. And Japan was one of our biggest, I guess, economic partners. And also that was the language that you were taught in school. So it was quite a different time. And when I did my degree, it was the first time it had ever been offered as a joint degree with comms and international Asian studies with a major in Japanese. So I would not say that I can speak it fluently anymore, because I'm pretty rusty. I find that I can understand if people are talking, but I have to answer in English, because it is really tough.
Really interesting. So it was like a mandatory language course as well in school, like
Yeah,
in in high school.
so in high school, that it wasn't mandatory. It was an elective, but that was the language that you could learn. Whereas now, it's quite different in schools. Like, so it was always French, like when I was younger, and then Japanese. And it's still taught in a lot of schools in Australia, as far as I know, but as well as, and Mandarin is obviously taught in a lot of schools too now.
Really interesting. We had like I think German in high school, German, Spanish, French. These were kind of uh, the
Yeah.
the basic ones. And I also have a bachelor's degree in communication, media
Hmm.
communication studies. So tell me, I'm interested about how do the Australians market's unique culture and consumer behavior influence how you approach branding and creative campaigns?
Look, I think if you look at some of the top Australian brands that are, really thriving in market, um, their communication style is very conversational. It's open and it's all focused on storytelling, which I think globally storytelling is obviously a huge part of brand and marketing, and bringing consumers along for the ride, and getting them to love your products, and create that loyalty piece. But in Australia, I think the unique thing about our campaigns is that we can maybe get away with a few more things in our campaigns. So I think, what these top brands in Australia really do really well is that conversational tone. They bring in, their fans and their loyal audiences. They bring them along for the ride. There's an inclusivity involved in that, which I think, it's almost like it gives people the feeling that they're behind the scenes. So they know what's happening in a brand, and that can be driven by founder content, and within marketing campaigns. And even if they're glossy marketing campaigns and they're high budget, I feel like they all seem to have that underlying tone of talking to you rather than talking at you. And and that and that tone, and that, I guess it's, maybe it's casual is the right word. I'm not sure, but it can be a bit cheeky as well. And I feel like that's something, even in, and it depends on industries and products and things like that. I know that, when we're talking about professional services, sometimes it's not appropriate, but I do feel like we can still, there's still a bit of tongue in cheek that we can use with our Aussie humor. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So, if I understood correctly, you with your marketing campaigns, you kind of try to involve the consumers as well, making it more personal, more relatable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you want them to feel like they know you. So,
mm,
and I think one of the key things in this is there's, like, the brands aren't faceless. Like, they're not just a beautiful glossy logo. There's people behind it, which means there's heart behind it. There's blood, sweat, and tears behind it, and you want to expose that, um, you know, on the consumer side, so they can feel invested in it and feel like they know you. Like, think about
mm,
when you're on Instagram, and you follow a brand that you love, but then, the founder is there and they show you all of the bags behind them that they're packing in, staying up late packing with the team, or like to send it out, like an e-commerce business, or even, at busy times, if like accountants, if it's tax time, like, being really honest about, like, oh, we're so busy, we're doing this, and we're like helping people do. So I think it's just really about that authenticity piece, but and also making people feel involved and included.
really interesting. And you being a leader as well, tell me, I'm interested, how do you foster collaboration and innovation within your team while maintaining clear client objectives?
Yeah, look, I think, so within my team, we're only quite a small team, of excuse me, everyone that is, we're all like long term team members, so we have a really good rhythm between us, in terms of one of the biggest things. that I find around, that collaboration piece is respect. Like, everyone has a voice, so everyone's ideas are valued, and their contributions and their thoughts around perhaps how we can get to the end goal of whatever the client campaign is, whether it's it could be, we could be talking about like website design and UX and UI around how we think people are going to engage with the site, and everyone has an opinion on it, and not just the UX designer or not just the web developer, everyone in the team. And I feel like that makes people feel, and it kind of spins back to that brand thing, but it makes people feel included on the journey, and they have the opportunity to speak up. And to me, that makes everyone feel valued, which I think is a huge part of having a really successful team that can produce really amazing outcomes for clients and for the business in general, and for longevity. Because if you have, spinning back to, like, if people are unhappy at work, they're not going to be doing great things. So my goal in my team is always, I know people have bad days. I'm realistic about that. But I think in general, if people can feel valued, happy, and, that they're doing a great job and they're contributing, then that the results speak for themselves.
That makes a lot of sense. And what would you say is the most important quality every leader should have, and why, in your opinion?
Mine is kindness. And I think kindness is, there's a few different ways to look at that. So in the way that I lead my team, and also in general, it's I guess one of my personal values as well is being kind in, even if it's a bad situation. I think that you're going to get better solutions if you can approach it from that perspective, right, and thinking about things more rationally. And a thing that in terms of that kindness piece, I think the thing that I always think in my head is flip it, which to me that means so in that kindness sense, just say somebody's done something really bad or horrific, they've really let you down. But if you flip it from their perspective and you think, well, why would they have done that? You can't understand everyone, but it makes it easier to be kind about it. And I think, I think being aggressive or nasty or, any of those kind of things, you're not going to get a result. You're just going to reach a stalemate on it. So kindness is very valued to me. And also I feel like I ingrain that in my broader team and our culture as well. If you're not kind, you don't fit in my businesses at all. And that goes for staff and clients as well.
I love that. I think kindness is so important and so maybe underrated. But just to kind of challenge you a little bit, do you think then that with a kind approach, so being kind, you are also able to set effective boundaries, objectives, and just say to someone that this was not okay, and what you are expecting from them in the future? Is this possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think kindness should be mistaken for softness and being a pushover. And that is not, I guess that's not, what my intention is in being kind. To me, it's about the delivery, and it's about thinking about how can I, from a perspective, deliver this information to this team member that, what they've done has, impacted something significantly. It's not appropriate. It's not in alignment with what they should have been doing. I think you can definitely have those tough conversations, but still do it with kindness. It doesn't mean that, that you're laughing and it's a happy conversation. It's definitely a tough conversation, but it's about the delivery. And I think if it's coming from a perspective of thinking about how can I deliver this in a kind way rather than a ruthless, aggressive, overbearing way, it's just a different perspective within the delivery. But I do feel that the outcomes and the expectations are still the same.
For sure. Kindness, and I would add respect as well. This is really, goes hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like part of that kindness piece is having that respect for other people at the same time, and approaching things like that.
Hmm. And I know you are also rooting and encouraging women in business. It's also where we met. Tell me, are there any specific challenge women face in Australia, in your opinion?
Look, I think in Australia, in the workforce right now, everyone has challenges, both males and females. In terms of female specific, there's less female CEOs. There's still a salary gap, pay gap between males and females, that exists within, globally, but within Australia as well, in those top jobs, and also, every level of employment besides, if you're not on an award rate, it does exist there. I think female funding of businesses is much lower than it is of male businesses in Australia, and statistically, that's been, a challenge over the past probably 2 decades, and something that I feel like as women, become more empowered. Like there's so many amazing groups and platforms for women to have those voices, and be able to challenge, I guess, those gender equalities that do exist within society. Specifically, I feel like whilst these inequalities might exist, I feel like as a female, we also live within a society, and at this time, there's nothing stopping you from going for it. And I feel like, the opportunity is ours now. We've made a lot of progress forward in terms of that, and I know a lot of amazing female founders out there, both locally and nationally in Australia, that are really thriving and paving the way for future generations as well. So hopefully, in 5 years' time, this will be less of an issue, and it will be more about, all of us banding together, whatever our gender, and, thriving for success.
Yeah, beautiful. And maybe one last question. If you could imagine a better world to live in, what would that look like for people globally?
Oh, well, I mean, wouldn't you say, like world peace? I mean, is one of the things. Like I wish, I wish that we could all um, live with kindness and respect amongst everyone. And I know that's a really altruistic thing to say, but if we just had that at every level, then the world would be a very different place.
Totally agree with you. What a beautiful thought to end it with. More kindness and respect, and a lot of things will change with just these two traits. Thank you, Beck, for everything that you shared today with us. It was an absolute pleasure to get to know Australia more, to hear about your leadership style and all your thoughts and insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to chat, and I'm going to Google the kangaroo thing shortly.
Okay.